Nicholas Copernicus published his book claiming that the Earth goes round the Sun in 1543, and he died that same year. People sometimes say that he put off publishing until the last moment because he was afraid of being persecuted by the Church. Is this what happened?
Well, it's not actually true that Copernicus delayed publication at all. He in fact wrote his ideas in a now very rare pamphlet which he circulated to people he thought might be interested, including senior members of the Church. And as a result of that, a cardinal was urging him to publish. The Pope was interested. People knew about his ideas. They were something which people thought was interesting, not necessarily true, and certainly not particularly dangerous. He was concerned that when his ideas got out to a more wider public, he would be subject to ridicule because it's simply so counterintuitive to believe that the Earth is moving at high speed through space. It's something we can't feel ourselves, and there are very good reasons for thinking that it isn't happening. So Copernicus was worried about how the public might view his ideas, and he was something of a perfectionist. He wanted to make sure that he'd presented everything in the best way that he possibly could, and therefore he did delay publication for a very long time and was eventually persuaded to publish even though he was still concerned that he hadn't quite got everything as perfect as he wanted it. Nonetheless, that was simply not a question of his being concerned about religious persecution. Copernicus was a churchman himself, although probably not an ordained priest. He was a canon of Freiburg Cathedral. He had good relationships with senior members of the Church, and in fact his mathematics was used by the Catholic Church when it came to do its calendar reform later on in the century. It's probably notable that when his book was eventually published, the reaction was fairly muted, and one modern scholar has actually called his book the book that nobody read. If you were to try and pick it up today, I would challenge anyone who's not a trained mathematician to get past the second chapter.
So you may say, therefore, why does he delay publishing till 1543? He was not afraid of the Church. He was a meticulous perfectionist, and he knew the idea sounded silly. Why weren't we flung off the earth and things of that sort? He also knew that there were passages in Scripture, such as in Joshua, where, of course, you have the earth standing still for a time while Joshua beats, I think it's the Amalekites, in a battle. So is there not Scripture that the earth does not move? But you have to bring a number of things in here. The medieval church, the Renaissance church, was never, ever fundamentalist. It was fully accepted that the knowledge of, let's say, the days of Moses of the earth was not the same as we know today. After all, there's no mention of America in the Bible. There's no mention of the North or South Pole in the Bible. But these were all known by Copernicus's day. Copernicus waited 30 years before he published. Yet, when you look at Copernicus's book, and most of the people who go on about the persecution of the church and science don't bother to read these books, I may say. They approach it from what I call the Mickey Mouse school of history. You believe what you were told, what you were told, what you were told. But read the books. And if you actually bother doing so, where Copernicus's prints in the flyleaves of his great De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium and the motion of the celestial spheres, 1543, a letter he has received from Cardinal Schönberg of Capua, a German, from the sound of his name, a German cardinal holding an appointment in Italy. And what does Schönberg say? My dear Canon Copernicus, we hear that you have an idea that the earth may rotate around the sun, and explaining the planetary motions differently. We are very interested in this in Rome, and we'd like to know more. And if I send a scribe to you in Poland, will you let him copy out your papers? All there is in this suggestion is that Copernicus is being respected as a great scholar. Nobody is saying, we want to get this so we can burn you at the stake, my lad. No. And Copernicus was so proud of that letter, 7 years later, he included it in his book. So the idea, therefore, that Copernicus was somehow hounded by the church, afraid of the church, simply don't wash. So where is the persecution? If you want to know whether there really is persecution, who said what to whom and what it meant, go to the original sources. Read the original writers. Don't go to the Mickey Mouse School of History.
Copernicus did put off publishing his book, not because he was afraid of being persecuted, but because the scientific evidence wasn't that strong, and he was afraid of looking foolish. Next time, we'll look at what happened in the years after Copernicus. Was the church opposed to scientific progress?